everybody. Welcome to Project HR, a podcast dedicated to building better workplaces. I'm your host, Beth Pilgreen, and today we'll be talking about employee relations, what it is, and the role it plays in fostering positive working relationships, minimizing conflict, and increasing productivity. Joining us today to talk about all things employee relations is Deb Muller. Deb has served in executive HR roles at numerous Fortune 500 companies, and today she is the CEO and founder of HR Acuity, which is a technology platform specifically built for employee relations management, all of which makes her the perfect guide for this episode's topic. Welcome to Project HR, Deb.
Thanks, Beth. I am thrilled to be here.
I'm so excited you are here. All right. This is our very first Project HR episode dealing with the topic of employee relations, or ER. So let's start off with a basic definition of the term.
Okay, so I'm sorry if I can't get more excited than saying that employee relations is a relationship between the employer and the employee. But if we think about it, it's really about looking at it from a behavioral perspective. What is the employee expected? How is the employee expected to behave when they're at work? And how is the employer expected to behave towards the employee? And when those two things match, everything's good. But when they kind of go off course, that's where you really need to think about your employee relations and what you're doing to manage them.
Sure. So employee relations is a branch of human resources, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. From the definition, it seems like ER to some degree is something that every HR professional is or should be involved in. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. And actually, it's not only HR, but it's management, supervisors, really everybody that touches the employee has to think about how that's impacting their behaviors or impacting the employee's behavior and impacting the organization. So when I kind of look at HR, I might be a little biased, but I really think about employee relations at the center of this HR hub. I actually have this drawing on my desk where I literally drew a hub with ER in the center. And around it, I have kind of all the other facets of HR that impact it. So it's organizational design. How does that design of the organization impact the employee's relationship to what they're supposed to be doing? Learning and development. How do we bring that in to help the employee perform best and have a good relationship? Comp and benefits. What are we paying them? How are we treating them? What type of benefits are we putting in place to make sure that they can perform the best? So absolutely, HR employee relations touches every facet of human resources. And depending upon how your organization is organized, which I know we're going to talk about in the podcast, depends upon how your role manages that as an HR professional.
Okay, so what is the benefit of having a dedicated employee relations management within a department? And how does it better serve the employees, in your opinion?
You know, it's an interesting question. We have been doing at HR Acuity, we do an employee relations benchmark study every year. And we've asked over the past couple of years about, organizational structure, and is employee relations embedded within an HR person's job? So as like a generalist or a business partner, or do you have it centralized? And over time, I think over the past 4 years, we've seen a shift. So now very few organizations have it kind of as embedded as something that you do, but they're looking at dedicated employee relations. And the reason is there's a couple of reasons. First of all, it brings neutrality, right? When something goes wrong in the employee-employer relationship, you want someone that can really look at it, who's not embedded with the people, can look at it neutrally and say, I want to understand the facts and I want to understand how we can best deal with the situation. The other thing that it brings is expertise. Employee relations professionals, one of the things they do a lot of is investigations, right? When there's an allegation of misconduct, we've been hearing a lot about that in the news these days. But when there's an allegation, they're the ones that are going to investigate. And you want someone who has that expertise. Now, when I was doing HR years ago, I did employee relations as part of my regular job. I happen to do a lot of investigations, but there's other people that may only do one a year, one every 6 months. And it's hard to become an expert in something that's so critical if you're doing it as part of your everyday job. So centralizing it, putting process in place is really important to better serving the company, but also the employees.
I can absolutely see how that neutrality there is key as well. Having an outside team come in who doesn't know you so well, but that they can just look at the facts and be objective and then help the team carry on with whatever needs to happen.
Well, the other thing that that does is also bring process, right? Process and consistency. If you have one team doing it, everybody should be doing it the same way. They should have a process for when an allegation comes in, how are they going to manage it? And that's much easier to do in a centralized group. It also allows you to have the data. And I know we'll talk about data, but having that data to see, is this the first time? Do we have history that we need to be
Hmm.
aware of? It's all in one centralized place. So you can really make the right decision based upon the facts that you uncover.
That's so great. And I don't understand why every organization wouldn't want that. Let's talk about some of the workplace issues that an employee relations professional or a team would typically handle.
Yeah, when we think about employee relation risk or issues, the way we try to get people to think about it is in this paradigm of a traffic light. So let's say green light. Green light is everything the organization puts in place to set up how they expect the employee to behave when they come to work. So they have job descriptions, they have policies and practices, they have strategies, they have guidelines. That's what we expect, employee A and employee B, when they come to work, this is how we expect them to behave. So kind of utopia, everybody's doing the right thing. But we know that in the course of any employee's life cycle, even the best employee, there's going to be deviations from those norms. So maybe somebody goes on a leave or they have a hiccup in their performance. Maybe they're doing better than they're expected to perform or less than they're expected to perform, or they violate a policy. Those are what we call yellow light incidents. So those are things that have to be managed, they have to be documented to make sure you get people back on track. You also can use that information to see if people are, if you have a group of people that are continually, going outside the lines of a policy, maybe you need to address the policy, maybe you need more training. So those are our yellow light incidents that many of the employee relations professionals deal with, as well as management. And then we have those red light incidents. So when you start going through that yellow light, if you go through it too many times, you're going to have a red light incident. And that could be an allegation of misconduct, a harassment allegation, discrimination. And those things need to be handled in a more structured way to make sure you get the facts and you remediate the situation as necessary.
Gosh, as an employee, I would feel really secure with having something like this in place because I know I've certainly been in roles before to where I've had a manager who, in my opinion, had a number of yellow and red lights, and they just got a talking to, and there wasn't a system in place to actually discipline.
Yeah, it's so important to look at those trends. Sometimes people say, "Oh, it's just about the investigations," and it is. Investigations have to be managed properly, but once something gets to the point of investigation that there's been an
Hmm.
allegation, you as an organization, you've missed something. There were signs, there were those yellow lights along the way that really were predictive indicators that something bad was going to happen. We think about some of
Yeah.
the headlines that we read about in the past couple of years since
Hmm.
Me Too. Think about Matt Lauer, right? Matt Lauer didn't walk into work one day and start
Right.
doing these kind of salacious, totally inappropriate things. What probably happened, and I wasn't there, so I'm going to kind of use him as an example or an adjective. What probably happened was, he was kind of the celebrity, told a joke, people laughed, told a joke, maybe it was a little bit off color and made a comment and people laughed and nobody said anything and it escalated, right? And it became an environment, not just for him, but in the organization where that type of thing was okay and nobody spoke up. So if organizations really want to make a difference
Hmm.
and to make sure that the environments are safe and better workplaces for their employees, they need to be looking at those predictive
Yeah.
indicators and they need to be willing to do something about it. And doing something about it doesn't mean terminating a person because they
Right.
tell a bad joke the first time, right? Or an inappropriate joke, but making sure that there's clarity in what's expected and that there are repercussions as appropriate. Employees want transparency and consistency. And I think employers should be able to provide that. One of the many things we learned from Me Too is that employees weren't coming forward. And they weren't coming forward when something went wrong at work. So the gut reaction immediately after was for everybody to say, oh, we got to set up all these new reporting mechanisms. We have to have hotlines. We have to do this or that. But the reality is, that's not why people aren't coming forward. The majority of people know where to go when something goes wrong. They don't come forward because they don't know what to expect. They don't know how they're going to be treated. They don't know if they're going to be leaved. They don't know if people are going to, if they're going to have to talk to people about it or other people are going to find out about it. So we need to bring more transparency to the process so that people feel comfortable coming forward. And quite frankly, HR does not have a great external reputation. People, it's kind of the joke, right? Oh, I don't want to go to HR. I don't like HR. And so we need to kind of work on improving that perception of what happens when you go to HR.
Deb, we're going to take a quick break to recognize our sponsor, and then we'll be right back here to continue with our conversation. Hi, it's Beth. Thanks for listening. Also, thanks to A Better Leader for supporting this week's episode of Project HR. A Better Leader is leadership training that brings your leaders into alignment. A Better Leader's online platform improves engagement and morale and directly affects your bottom line. Get your free 2-week trial at abetterleader.com. We're back, everybody, with Project HR and our conversation with Deb Muller from HR Acuity. So how would you say that employee relation professionals can manage and improve the employee experience?
Well, transparency, process, and consistency is really important. Employees do not come to work with an expectation that everything is going to be perfect and everything's going to go well. But they do want to know that when something doesn't go well, that the employer is going to do something about it. We did a survey last year. It was fascinating. I guess it was last year. We asked about 1,500 workers, so not HR professionals, but just regular people that go to work every day. We asked them questions about their experience when something goes wrong at work. And what was really fascinating about it, and we kind of took them through this thing, have you ever had an issue? Where do you go when you have an issue? Was it resolved? Was it investigated? And then we asked questions like, how likely are you to recommend your peers or your colleagues go to HR with a similar issue? And how likely are you to recommend your company as a place to work? And we kind of looked at that, whether or not they'd had an issue, whether it had been resolved or not. So what was fascinating was when reported issues were investigated and resolved, respondents were about as likely to recommend the company, about 45%, as a place to work as those who never had an issue at all.
Wow. Why do you think that was?
Well, as long as if I have an issue and you handle it, then I'm going to feel good about the company.
Yeah.
Now, if I have an issue and you don't handle it, so not unsurprisingly, when the issues were reported and not investigated, employees were 29% less likely to recommend the company. So it's not about, making sure everybody's absolutely perfect. That's never going to happen. You have human beings bringing a lot of differences to work, and they're working on different things and personalities. So things are going to go wrong. It's not if, it's when. But you need to be ready to respond, and you need to be ready to respond in an appropriate way. And that's what's going to make the difference.
Absolutely. Well, I can imagine too, you're going to feel more respected if you are heard and if actions are taken place because you were heard and you were believed and taken seriously. I can absolutely see why the percentage was large of those who would want to stay with the company and recommend them. Yeah.
It's so funny because like you say that, I'm like, yeah, obvious,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's so obvious, but how do we do that? How do we change it? And there's things that companies are doing now. Companies are starting to be more transparent about process. They're putting process in place. So technology specifically for this issue. They're sharing with their employees that they have a process. They're sharing expectations before something happens, or at least that's a best practice. They should be doing that. Many companies, well, maybe not many, but companies are starting to share data, right? They're starting to share data about how many sexual harassment issues or allegations they had in an organization. Now, a small organization, that might be a little difficult because obviously you're not going to share the details of it. But some of the larger organizations, both Google, Microsoft, announced they were going to start sharing and being transparent about it. So if you think about the impact of that, if my company comes out and says, hey, to our employees, last quarter we had X number of harassment issues and 60% of those were substantiated and 40% were not. Okay. Not everything is substantiated. That says to the employee, first of all, you're counting. You're actually keeping
Hmm.
track. That means it's important to you because you're taking the time to keep track. So number one. And number two, when they start to see, wow, you actually substantiated some of those allegations. You believe the people. You did something
Hmm.
about it. That's going to start building that trust and allowing people to come forward in the future. And I think that's really going to start to shift the change when employers do that.
Oh, definitely. Now, are you saying that they share that within the company or they share it publicly?
Well, if you're Google or Microsoft, as soon as you share something within
Yeah,
the
that's true.
company, it becomes public. And then those are the two that last spring kind of came out and said they were doing that. Either they had been doing it or they were going to start doing it. But yeah, they share it with their employees.
That's awesome. I'd love to talk about employee relations and technology. What kind of technology are we talking about?
Well, hopefully HR Acuity.
Yes.
But it should be specialized technology, and I'm pretty passionate about this question because we have a lot of companies that are, first of all, they're starting to think about employee relations differently, and they're starting to recognize that they need, like for everything else in your organization, they need technology. They need to leverage technology to understand the data. So they start looking for the right technology to use, and sometimes parts of the organization, IT, will say, hey, we have technology you can use for that. We have a case management system that we use for sales, and we got a lot of licenses for that. We already have it
Mhm.
installed. Or we have a ticketing system that we use for IT. And hey, just let's use that for employee relations. And that is just the wrong answer. I mean, employee relations, I like to think about in a workplace on this spectrum, kind of like the healthcare spectrum, right? So during your course of your work or your life or your health, you have your general practitioner, your physician, right? So your physician's kind of who you go to for the day to day, and things like an IT ticketing system or maybe just a case management system. That's fine, right? You want to know how much vacation time you have left. Your computer's not working and you need to get it set up. Those work
Yeah.
fine for that. But when it comes to employee relations, you kind of think about it as the heart of the organization, the heart of your employees. And when you have an issue with your heart, if your heart is not working, you do not go to your physician and ask them to help you. You go to a specialist. You go to a specialist, you go to your cardiologist, you go to your heart surgeon because the risk is
Yeah.
too high. You want to go to someone who has the expertise, who's going to help you navigate to make sure that you can mitigate that risk. And if something goes wrong, you have an allegation of sexual harassment or you need a bypass surgery, you want to use a technology that actually is purposely built for that process.
Absolutely. Well, I want to get to HR Acuity in just a second, but I have one question right before that. So, you had a blog post recently and you wrote about 3 ways that HR technology can improve the employee relations process. Would you share those 3 ways with us? Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is it's going to save you time and money. So you're going to improve efficacy of both your HR business partners and your employee relations professionals by about 20%. And when I use these terms, we actually Forrester Research conducted what they call their TEI study for us, a total economic index of using HR Acuity. And so this is their data that they have, and you can go to our
Oh,
website and
awesome.
download that full study. We even have a calculator. Yeah, that's right there. But one of the things, so it increases efficacy of the employee relations professionals and the HR team
Wow.
by 20%. They're going to spend a lot of less time creating manual reports, chasing down information, looking at historical data. Same thing with your HR professionals when they have to work with their business partners. All of that time is going to be saved because look, technology saves time. It drives
Mhm.
efficiencies. So this is no different. The second thing was it's going to improve communications, right? You're having one thing in place, it's going to improve those communications between your staff and your employees. Multiple people are going to be on the same page when it comes to relevant information and evidence. And that's what it's designed to do right there. And then following, it's going to build trust. It's going to build trust in the organization because people feel like there's a process. One of the features within our technology is when you sit down for an interview with someone as part of an investigation, we serve you up appropriate protocols. So things that you're going to talk to the person about
Mhm.
when they sit down because they're nervous, right? They've been accused of something or bad has happened to them. So you sit down and you say, Beth, I'm glad you've come to talk to us today because at our company, we take these issues so seriously, so much so that we have standard protocols that we go through with everybody who's part of an investigation because we want to make sure that you understand what to expect from the process. And we want to make sure that you understand what we expect from you during the process. So that really starts the conversation and it indicates to the person that there's a process in
Yeah.
place. And that's, again, it's back to that transparency. It's going to build trust that you're actually not just doing this behind a curtain, but you actually have a specific way that you're addressing it. And not particularly in that blog, but in the TEI study, one of the other things obviously is reducing risk for the company. So, the company still, there's huge amount of risk with these issues when things go wrong. We've seen that in the headlines. And so the ability to have proper documentation, to be dealing with issues when they come up appropriately, so that if you have to defend yourself, you are going to greatly mitigate those legal and financial risks.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back. You're listening to the Project HR podcast. Today's guest is Deb Muller with HR Acuity, and our topic is employee relations. We're back, everybody. Okay, now I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about HR Acuity specifically. What is it? Why did you develop it? All of that good stuff.
Yeah. So, as you said at the beginning, my background's in HR. So, something I've been doing for my career and did a lot of employee relations. I just was the one that always opened the drawers and kind of found things that, kind of I went after. And all of a sudden, I'd be doing some big investigation. And so, I did a lot of investigations. But I did realize that it was really the last manual bastion in technology for HR, actually, for all of organizations. There was no technology, there was a lack of process, there was all the things we just talked about were not there. And so I decided, because I had absolutely no technology background, that I would be the right person to develop the software. So maybe a little crazy too, but in a way, and when I say develop it, no one should be scared. I did not actually code it. We have experts for that. But in a way, that's what I believe makes HR Acuity different. It was
Mm-hmm.
developed by people who have done the job. It wasn't just some engineers who tried to figure it out. It's people that did the job. So when we go through our software with our clients or with prospective clients, they get it. They can understand that employee relations professionals, experts, they're the ones that designed this product. And we designed it originally. I mean, we've been in production for over 10 years, but now it's just such a different tool than it was because we've continued to evolve it. We've continued to evolve it through our expertise, but actually through the expertise of our clients. We have this amazing group of clients and employee relations leader community that we are constantly asking information for. What are your challenges? What are you doing in your organization? What's happening in the workplace environment since Me Too? How do we need to really pivot towards, making a difference in the employee experience with a tool that employees don't even use? How can our tool, which employees don't have their hands on, actually impact the employee experience? So we're continuing to evolve that within our technology. But at its core, we are the only technology out there specifically developed and designed for employee relations and investigations management.
That's so cool. You've got to be so proud.
I am. It's been
Sure.
fun, and it's also great to do what you love. I come to work every day. I can't wait to get in. And sometimes people are going to think I'm crazy. I think the weekends are way too long.
You do. Well, that's great. You're passionate about what you do, and that's only going to reflect in your work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you were just saying that employees do not use this. Is that correct? Is it just for management?
Well, so yeah, they don't directly use it. So our main users are employee relations professionals, HR professionals, the legal team, compliance, ethics. We just released a version for managers, which is really a set of mobile enabled but gated tools to help the managers document and work with their employees when something goes wrong. I mean, employee managers are
Mhm.
on the front line, so we need to give them better tools. And this has also been a gap. Over the course of my career, I remember saying to managers who come to me with an employee issue, when they're about to leave my office, I would say, "Oh, remember, make sure you document that. And they kind of look at you like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know
Yeah.
where to document it, how to document it. And how are you going to know if I document it? So we finally created a tool, very easy. It's mobile enabled because everybody's got a phone in their pocket. So that they can actually, when they have an issue, they can go there. It's going to give them the right templates. It's going to gate them and have them connected to their HR professional. So we're not leaving them on their own. So they can still work with them to get the right documentation into the system, which is so important. Again, if we go back to those predictive indicators, having that complete data to really understand what's
Hmm.
going on in our organization. So managers are also using it. So the employees don't technically use it, but we have some tools in there that we do interface with employees. One of the things that we introduced this year was an ENPS score. And let me explain that.
Yeah, please do.
It's an employee net promoter score. So if you remember, I mentioned in our survey, we asked the question, how likely are you to recommend your company as a place to work? That's kind of a traditional net promoter question. So we added that as well. So when an employee has an issue, there's an investigation, there's actually a survey built in the tool where the HR person can send it out to the employee and ask them a few questions. Ask them, were you treated with dignity and respect during the investigation? Was your issue handled in a timely manner? And how likely are you to recommend HR to a friend or a colleague with a similar issue? So, getting that feedback back from them, how was their experience? We're not asking them, did you like the outcome? Because that may not be up to them. But we're asking, how were you treated?
Hmm.
Were you treated appropriately? And I think that's really going to change the game because that's where HR can really start getting the feedback and start measuring how they're doing to change the perception to make sure that people do feel comfortable coming forward.
Well, I love the analytics that HR Acuity offers. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Anything that we haven't already said?
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about it and how important it is. One of the things we do at HR Acuity is, and the way we built it, is we built the analytics on our database based upon employee relations. How do we want to look at different dimensions of the employee relationship, of the issues that they're dealing with? It's not one dimensional, two dimensional. I don't know how many dimensions, but if you think about something, it may be a harassment issue dealing with Tom in the New Jersey office who's in finance, and it happened at a holiday party. So we've really built our dimensions up so that we can start to tell the
Hmm.
stories of what's going on in the organization. And we try to do it in a way that an HR professional or a user doesn't have to have a PhD in analytics to figure it out. We're going to serve those insights up to them. We're going to serve insights up to the legal team, which are going to look different, or to the CHRO, which are going to look different again. We also provide benchmarks. So how am I doing vis-a-vis other similarly situated organizations? Right?
Oh,
I had 30 allegations of harassment last year. So what? Is that good? I mean, we know that no allegations is bad, right? Because you're just kidding yourself. So is 30 good? Is that bad? How does that look against my peer group? And so we provide those insights as well.
when you say peer group, are you talking about from other similar organizations?
Yep, similar organizations.
So that's public too, or you can make it public just so other people can compare and contrast?
Well, so we have it primarily through the HR Acuity clients. So the clients give us permission to take that anonymous aggregate data. So we like similar issues. So we compare similar issues, even though one client may call it, harassment, another might call it, respect in the workplace violation. We can correlate those together through the data analytics and show them what's going on. Yeah, it's a great thing. It's funny because sometimes their legal team will like, oh, we don't want to share that data. They're not sharing data. They're sharing aggregate data that's totally anonymized. But the business teams are like, no, we need that information to know how we're doing. Otherwise, you're just giving people numbers. Numbers
Hmm.
aren't helpful. You need the insights to really understand how that can impact your organization and the changes that you need to make.
Is that something that they would request, like if they would directly contact you guys and request that information, or is that readily available within HR Acuity?
It's in HR Acuity. It's part of our analytics. We have benchmark dashboards on that are available. We also do, as part of our employee relations study every year, a benchmark study. We gather that information from other organizations outside of HR Acuity as well. Last year, our survey covered about 4.5 million employees with all the organizations that participated. So we have that as well. Absolutely.
Gosh, this is such a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, we're pretty proud of it. Yeah. And it's really the first time anyone's started looking at this and really creating true benchmarks.
Wow. You guys have really had a lot of success and excitement just starting this in general. I'm really happy for you all.
Yeah, I'm just happy that we're able to be making a difference. Frankly, when I set out to do this
Mhm,
software, it was about creating a better process for organizations. And
mhm.
then Me Too happened 2 years ago. And while we're still creating better organizations, better processes for organizations, it's really given a different type of a vision for our organization about how we're creating safe workplaces and something that we're really proud of. And we're going to continue doing and working with our clients to make it better until we get there.
Well, how can people get in touch with you if they are interested after listening to this podcast? How can they get in touch with HR Acuity and get to know more about that?
Yeah, there's a couple ways. Certainly our website, hracuity.com, easy enough. We'd love to have you like us on LinkedIn and follow us on LinkedIn. We put out a lot of great topics. We have a newsletter you can sign up for on our website as well. We have tons of downloadable content. I mentioned some of them today, but our surveys are all available. The survey data that comes out, it's free. The TEI study, the blogs that we write, lots of ways to get involved, and we'd love to talk to you and learn more about what's going on in your organization.
Well, Deb, thank you for catching us up to speed on employee relations and the critical role it plays, not just within HR, but also for the companies and individual employees it serves. But we're not done with the interview yet, Deb, because now it's time for our lightning round questions. These are the questions we ask every guest of the podcast. Are you ready to give it a shot?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, topic showdown. We've been talking about employee relations, also known as ER. In your opinion, and this is very important even if you've never seen the shows, which medical television drama was better, ER or Grey's Anatomy?
Ooh, okay. So I've seen both of them, I must admit, all 75 seasons of Grey's Anatomy.
There's a
Um,
lot.
but I mean, come on, George Clooney.
Come on.
Really, is there a choice here?
No,
ER.
not in my opinion. We're
Yeah,
on the same
yeah.
page. Okay, in a more serious question, what is the worst job interview question you've ever been asked?
God, it's been a while since I've been interviewed, so I need to think about that. Um, Actually, you know what? I have one. An employee told me once. It's a crazy question. She told me that she was asked, "What 3 items would you choose to bring in a zombie apocalypse?"
What?
So I know, and she was so funny. She told me that after she actually took the job. She asked them why, and they had no reason as to why they asked. I don't know. So I, I'm
That's
going to throw
interesting.
that one out there. Don't ask that question.
Okay, noted. What's your favorite thing about working in ER and ER tech?
I have to say it's what I was saying before. It's helping people. It's really kind of more of the social end of it and what we're doing. I love working with our clients. I love being a part of their organizations as we work together.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh, this is advice I was given several years ago, and I share it all the time. Um, a friend of mine told me that when you ask for money, you get advice, and when you ask for advice, you get money. And it is the most true piece of advice
Ah,
I've ever heard of. And if you think about it, and I use that in business, right? So it's about consulting with people as opposed to asking for the sale. But I often coach people on that if they're looking for a new job, if they don't know what to do. You sit down with people and say, "I just want to ask your advice. I'm kind of, thinking about making a career change, and I know you've done something. I don't need a job. Just kind of tell me what you think that I should be doing." When you start doing that, people are going to start saying, "I'm going to recommend you to so and so." But if you go in saying, "Hey, I need a job. You want to meet for coffee?" You're not going to get a lot of people calling you back. So just great advice that I always share with others.
that's so true. Okay, who or what inspires you?
Well, right now, I would have to say my team inspires me. I am so fortunate. I feel so fortunate that we built this company. We're growing extremely fast. We're bringing on new people, and they do their jobs really well, but they're also so inspired by what we're doing and our vision. And so everybody works together, everybody pulls in. I hope we continue to have this culture and we uphold these values as we grow even more. But I couldn't do without them, and they really inspire me.
That's awesome. Well, Deb, thanks for joining me today on this week's episode of Project HR. As always, I'd like to send our thanks out to our listeners and our subscribers. And don't forget to download the episode companion for this episode at projectionsinc.com/podcast. And if you've ever thought about being a guest on Project HR, please drop us a line at projecthr@projectionsinc.com. We are always looking to talk to new folks about HR topics. And last but not least, don't forget to rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your content. Comments are always welcome too. And in fact, we want to shout out to Stephanie Mialki for her comment about Project HR on Apple Podcasts. She said Project HR is her favorite HR podcast. Every week is something new, out of the box, and informative. Thank you, Stephanie. We appreciate your kind words. And as for everyone else, we'd love to hear what you think about us too. So please leave us a comment if you can. Well, that's it from me for now. Let's make it a great day at work.